Well, welcome everybody to our next interview in our series of interviews with our endorsed candidates. We've got Jim Wilson, who is running for the 3rd Legislative District Senate. Welcome, Jim. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, MJ.
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody knows Jim's story, but Jim was a write-in candidate for the primary. And so you're going to have to tell us a little bit about that, Jim. Now you're a full-fledged, full-blown candidate for the general election. So, Jim, tell us about yourself, your background, and why you are running.
Well, my background is I've owned a real estate company for about 14 years, but I've been in the real estate industry for I think 38 years. And prior to that, I owned three or four other businesses, cold storage warehouse, food distribution company, the precursor of a mini mart, and I have rental properties and all that kind of stuff. So I had never. I'm kind of a goal setter in general. I mean, every year, I don't know if I have it here or not. I don't. I do. So I have a spiral notebook for every year, and I write down all my goals and all that kind of stuff. And if you reviewed that every year, you'd never see run for political office. You'd never see be president of the United States. So right before during the primary, we were going on vacation. Every year we go to Priest Lake for 2 weeks, and I'm writing a book on mental conditioning. So I also do classes for high school kids, teams and stuff on mental conditioning and on how to be successful and all that. So I'm about 160 pages into this book, and I thought, this is the first year we're going on vacation with no children. I'll be able to finish my book maybe. So it was kind of exciting. So I'm filling out my ballot on a Friday night. And I get to the race with third district state senate, and Marcus Riccelli is running unopposed. And it, let's say, I'll be polite. It pissed me off. So I wrote my name in there, and I asked my wife to write her name in, and she rolled her eyes in the back of her head, and she goes, "Fine," and she writes it in there. And I called two of my 10 brothers-in-law, and I texted a few friends. So somewhere between 8 p.m. and 10:30 a.m., I got a call from you. Hi, this is MJ. Hey, I'm getting these calls, and people want to write your name in as a write-in candidate. And I'm going, well, I'm leaving for vacation in an hour and a half. I'm not a politician, but I don't think this is the way you begin the campaign. And you said, would you do it? And you have those moments in your life where someone asks you a question or there's a situation and it seems like it's a long pause, It's probably only a second. You probably didn't notice it on the phone. But there's a voice, and you guys can guess who the voice was. It said, do it. So I said yes. And I meant yes. And after I hung up the phone, I'm going, oh shit.
What did I just do?
What have I done? So I'm getting in the car, I'm driving up to the lake. I call one of my brothers-in-law. I go, hey, I don't know who you called last night, but you better call some more people. Anyway, so long story short, the ballots had already been turned in for a couple of weeks. So it was, in a way, it was a kind of a miracle that we had the enough votes to qualify for the general election, but we did. So I've been really fortunate to meet up with Jill Olson, who's working as my campaign manager, and she's working really hard and giving me lots of direction. And she says, Jim, speak from your heart. And my wife Kathleen says, Jim, don't swear. So I already messed it up once. So I apologize to everyone, that human thing. But anyway,
Yeah,
so we're off and running.
yeah.
And so I guess you could say the reason I'm angry, or I'm not angry, the reason I'm running is I am angry. This is the first time in my long tenure here on Earth that I can remember that I've ever seen every segment of our society losing. And what I mean by that is, you can walk downtown or, drive on the road and you see people laying in the gutter and you see people smoking crack and there's misery out there. And so the homeless problem is growing and growing. It's not getting better. the people in the middle class are also suffering. I mean, there's inflation, and not all that's caused by the state, but some of the policies that are coming out of Olympia hurt us. For example, um, I did a talk last night for Gonzaga University in a climate thing panel, and I mentioned um, that the state of Washington makes more on a gallon of gas than Exxon. I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, or actually a couple of months ago, I went down to see my son in South Carolina, who's in the Air Force, and I went to visit him. And I got in my rental car and I was driving, and as I drove out of the airport, I saw a sign: gas $1.89 a gallon. Last week, I paid 4.09.
Yeah.
There's something wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't, it's not all the gas tax. There's lots of other stuff going on. But what's coming out of our state is things are not getting better. They're getting worse. And so I mentioned the middle class is hurting, the lower, and the business owners are hurting.
Yeah.
You see boarded up windows, you see people, and I've talked to several business owners, and I won't name them because it would be detrimental probably to their business, but they're on the edge, and these are well-known companies. They're not small. But people destroy their windows or their graffiti or whatever. And I've talked to other business owners downtown, and the city and the county claims, well, property crime is down and all that kind of stuff. And no, they don't report it because their insurance rate goes up. They just deal with it. But sometimes it's almost overwhelming. And so if I'm running, I you stop me if I'm talking too much.
No, you're doing great. Yeah.
When I
This
when
people want
when I
to
give
know, Jim.
Yeah, when I give these talks, to people, and this is not like me to give talks, because I'm generally kind of shy, but I'm worked up. I relate a story from Ronald Reagan way back, even before he became governor, and he was talking about two of his friends who went to meet with a Cuban immigrant. And the Cuban immigrant was talking about his time when after Castro took over and communism and socialism, and it was just again misery and he escaped, came to America, and it was talking about it. And one of the guys says to the other one, says, "Man, we're lucky we live here." And then the Cuban immigrant says, "You think you're lucky? I had a place to go to. We got nowhere to go. This is it."
Yeah.
And Kathleen, my wife, and I have talked several times over the years about, well, where else could we go? When, because you look out there and you go, what can one person do? It's almost overwhelming. And no matter how you vote, people do it. And so we go, "Ooh, you move to Priest Lake. We love it up there." And I've been up there New Year's. It's freezing, Or we go to, and it's cold here, I know, but we can go to Phoenix, but God, it's hot. I mean, it's really hot down there. Or we go to California. No way. I'm not going down to the communism. I mean, this is it.
Yeah.
This is all we got. And I look, you're supposed to ask me questions, but I don't. You just stop me when you tell me. I changed now that I've become a candidate. So I went in shortly after got in the race. I went in for a physical or something, scheduled exam. The nurse comes in and she wraps the thing around your arm for the blood pressure. The blood pressure is great, like 112/60 or something. But it used to be a couple months ago, I'd be thinking, gosh, I hope I'm healthy. My first thought when she walked in is, I wonder if she's a voter in the third district.
Yeah.
Right? So I said to her, I said, "Well, do you live here in Spokane?" She goes, "Yes." And she lives in the third district. I'm going, "Cha-ching, baby, it's a vote." And then I start talking to her. She said she hasn't voted for 10 or 15 years. And I said,
Wow.
"Why not?" She goes, "Because it doesn't matter. They just do what they want to do." And it's true. And I've talked to many other people. I now everywhere I go, "Hi, I'm Jim Wilson." I'm becoming with the P word. And so many, and in doorbelling. And
Hmm.
I talk to we have our groups that go out, and we review at the end. And I'd say 10 to 20% of the people out there don't vote
Wow.
or aren't registered because they've lost hope. It like they doesn't matter to them. I hate politics. I hate the arguing. all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's a sickness that's come into our society primarily because government is not responsible to the people. And you can look at all the state policies. I feel like I'm talking too much, but
You're
I'm
doing
worked.
great.
A few years ago we had $30 license tabs. We voted those in. So um, now they're not $30.
I know.
They didn't add taxes, they added fees, which are remarkably like taxes to me because I write a check. We voted, our county voted a few years ago that we wanted to maintain 3 county commissioners. And the legislature, now we have 5.
Right.
Purely political, purely political.
Yep.
In 2016 and in 2018, we voted against having cap and trade, and now we have cap and trade.
Yep.
So when I hear someone says the government's not responsive, I believe it.
Yeah.
Anyway, oh, you better ask me
Yeah.
another question.
Yeah, you bet. Well, and I think you bring up a great point too, especially where we live here in Spokane, because we do have Idaho that is 30 miles away. And so
Absolutely.
we do see the stark contrast in we have a Democratic majority in our legislature,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
Which, of course, your race would be huge if you could win this, Jim, to get a Republican in that seat. And whereas Idaho policies, I mean, I think it is a very stark contrast for us, when you
Absolutely.
just drive across that border 30 miles away. So we can see the dichotomy and it's these different policies. So I think your why is so important and people need to know their vote matters. Their vote does
Absolutely.
matter. That's how we hold our officials accountable. So why should citizens vote for you, Jim, over your opponent in this race, Marcus Riccelli?
Well, we have to change the direction we're going. Like I said, things aren't working. There's an old expression: when you find yourself in the bottom of a hole, quit digging. And the more we put off change, and the change has to be from in the legislators in this and the representatives that we put in office, the longer we put off the change, the harder it's going to be to reverse course. And at some point, and the point has to be now.
Yeah,
We just can't keep going in this direction. So I mean, I think I bring to the table the ability to negotiate. I mean, I've basically done this my whole life. From the first part of the food distribution company I ever had was selling pies. So we would sell between 200 and 2,200 pies a day, and we'd sell them to restaurants. And so you had selling is a lot like negotiating.
yeah,
And you realize that you can have a win-win situation is what you want to have. You can have a lose-win or a win-lose. You don't want to have a lose-lose. And what's coming out of Olympia is lose-lose.
yeah,
So, I mean, we have to have the ability to talk to the other team, reason with the other team, come to some sort of an agreement, even if we have to compromise a little. We're not going to, it's like boiling the frog. That's what the Democrats have done to us over time. They've boiled the frog to the point where now we're actually this is where the water's boiling.
yeah,
We have to begin to boil the water for them and move the course that we're going.
yeah.
But we can't do it if we keep electing the same people.
Yeah, I mean, are people better off than they
No,
were? Are things going better, for people in Spokane and in the
they're,
third
they're
district?
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's why you're running, and we appreciate you stepping up to the plate, So, what are some of your top policy priorities going into this office, Jim?
The top one is public safety, which wraps into homelessness. We have the lowest per capita police to the population, I think, of any state in the union, and it shows. But not only that, the legislature has done things in the past to hamper what the police do, and so people get mad at the police, but a lot of times it's not their fault because the Democrat legislature takes away the tools. And I've often said they try to take every non-lethal tool that the police have, so that the only thing left on the policeman's belt is a gun. And that's not what we want. So I got the endorsement of the police guild here last week.
That's
And by the
awesome.
time I got done, they were they were ready to hug me because there's into the homeless, we deal with the homeless and it's not pretty. They are suffering.
Yeah.
So the thing there's no they're spending lots of money out of Olympia, but there's no plan. It's kind of like the never mind. There's no plan. And I did a few months ago before we ever dreamed of this thing. A police friend of mine took me out to coffee and said, "Do a public records request for the non-barrier housing in downtown Spokane." So I did. And I'm still getting emails from the whatever it is agency. And I have over 5,000 pages of police reports.
Wow.
And there are things like theft and robbery, but assaults and physical assaults and rape.
Mm,
And these are the most vulnerable people in our society. Okay. There's a criminal element out there in Spokane and Spokane County,
mhm.
but it's primarily in downtown Spokane that's permeated out into the neighborhoods. And so they're doing things to the like I said, the most vulnerable people in our society who have no protection. And at the same time, they're the same people who are breaking the windows in our car or breaking into our garage or doing even worse. And as the as the criminal population grows and gets more powerful because we've taken away accountability, we don't allow the police to do their job. It's going to permeate more into the neighborhoods and more into our own lives, and they get more emboldened as we're going on. So there's different segments into the homeless population, and the criminal element is the first one that we need to get rid of. So we have to empower the police to be able to do their job, and we have to elect new judges. There's two judges that are running that we have endorsed that are I've come to know them because I've been to a lot of the same events. They are super
Yeah.
well-intentioned, well in integrity. Um, we have to get elect those guys too.
Yeah. Yep. There's
Casey
a
and
lot
Matt.
of,
So because the judicial also has to do their work.
yeah.
So we have to enable the police, but then we have to have a plan on the other end to deal with the homeless. And not all the home you can't lump all the homeless into one group. You have people, you have what we used to call bums. That's probably wrong to say. That's their thing, and they do it. They're okay, but they're transit and they move around. But we have a certain segment of the population that was let go when the legislature a number of years ago defunded the state hospitals. That's where we used to send people who had the kind of mental incapacities. That was an error. I don't think they knew it was an error at the time, but it's an error now. And so we have to be able probably to reopen those and be able to send people who cannot take care of themselves because of their mental issues. We need to be able to send them somewhere to get the proper care and guidance. We owe that to them as human beings.
Yeah.
But there's another segment out there that are hooked on drugs and alcohol. We have to be able to give them treatment, but then we have to give them a path out of homelessness. We can't just get them sober and say, "Here's a room for you. Good luck." There's a path,
Yeah.
just like climbing out of a ladder. If you're in a hole, there's certain rungs to the ladder. It requires supervision and it requires lots of different things. But we don't do that as a state or as a community, and that's the part that's missing in the equation.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, just throwing more money at it, it's become this homeless industrial complex, but we're not seeing the results.
Absolutely.
And certainly compassion is not enabling the, hurtful behaviors, right?
No,
If people are doing behaviors that are hurting themselves and hurting others, that's not compassion. Yeah,
no,
we've got to be honest about that.
that's right.
So, yeah, and obviously this trend that we've had with the majority in the legislature has gone that direction and it's not working. It's getting worse.
Getting
So,
worse.
what's the definition of insanity,
Yep.
right?
Do it over and over. Expect the results to be different.
Right, right, exactly. What about you mentioned, like the fees or gas tax. I know cost of living is such a big issue for so many people right now with inflation and everything. Do you
Sure.
have some, real priorities around helping with fees and regulatory? fees,
Well,
Jim?
I think there's lots of things you could do to trim the government and trim the bureaucracy. But in the big thing in this election are the initiatives.
Yeah,
And the one that's, that's really important to me at this point is we cannot eliminate natural gas.
right.
We just can't do it. And so if I talk to people at Avista and they said that if, all right, there's more demands on our electrical system, the need for power is growing.
Mhm.
We didn't used to have cell phones or laptops or computers even when I was growing up. Now we have all those things and more and more and more and more, right? And so, and then if you add the possibility of AI, which seems to be, really popular and powerful, the power demands that AI needs are incredibly high. So if we eliminated natural gas out of the equation for our energy, then Vista or any other power company is going to have to find other sources of power. Otherwise, in fact, right now we have brownouts and blackouts in Seattle and Portland, but we don't have them over here yet. So if we eliminate natural gas and force Vista, for example, to go and buy power off, it's a commodity.
Yeah,
It's not that they're now they generate their own stuff. If they have to go buy electricity from somewhere else, prices will go up, and they estimate 70 to 80%. Now,
yeah,
my daughter used to live in California. They don't generate their own power; they buy it off the grid. Their bills were $6 or $7 or $800 a month for electricity.
yep.
That
That's
should be what
crazy.
rent is,
Ugh,
you know.
yeah.
So
And our legislature has already taken away the ability for new homes to have gas put in,
yeah,
right? A lot
yeah.
of people don't realize that.
No, they're putting their eggs in electric cars, which are again another big would be another drain.
Yeah,
But there's other technologies that are out there that are potential, other than electric cars.
yeah,
I mean, there's hydrogen, and there's even technologies that I talked about last night. The University of Illinois is in the process of developing to a greater extent batteries that use CO2, which is what the climate people claim is one of the major contributors to global warming, taking the CO2 and making it into power. We have an innovative American psyche.
yeah,
When there's a problem, we solve it. And so we have, and that's not an eminent thing, but we're in the process of developing these things. But the technologies are not there. So if we put all of our money into infrastructure, for example, for cars, for electricity, and then it turns out to be hydrogen, or it turns out to be CO2, we just wasted all that
yeah.
taxpayer money.
Well,
So you
look
have
at
you
the
have to wonder who's funding that.
yeah, look at the, catastrophic events of this last week with the hurricane. I mean, the grid is completely wiped out for, thousands and thousands of people, right?
Yeah,
And there's a lot of people that think they've said, thank goodness I've got a gas stove.
yeah,
Because
you bet.
they have no electricity.
Yeah,
So we have to maintain those balances. So
absolutely.
yeah, Jim, how do you plan to ensure that you're beholden to the citizens of the third district and represent their voice and not special interest groups? We know that in any elected office, there's a lot of push to go along to get along.
Um, you remember I even argued with our party. I won't go into details. I have a
We've
hard
had
time.
some good conversations, haven't we,
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, and I've appeared before a couple of committees and I voiced my opinion. And I'm not easily influenced. I listen. I do listen and I get ideas. I mean, um, I just finished a book on humility, as a matter of fact. Humility is the key to virtue in religion. And so there's a reason we have two ears and one mouth. So I'm getting better at this. I do listen, but I have a hard time being forced or pushed. I grew up in a period, you're too young, of the 60s, where we learned to question authority, power to the people. And I still have that.
Okay.
And so I look at all these young people, Marcus Shelley's, 40 something and Natasha's 40 something and these other people running. And they're running, God, they're the establishment. I still don't like the establishment. you know. But I have I don't think I could be bought off. I don't need anything. I mean, I'm not, wealthy or anything. I don't need it. And I don't plan on being there. I'm not going to be a career guy, but I'll start turning the wheel
Yeah.
and we'll get other people in there.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing this for me because I don't need it, really. I I love my family. Even my little grandchildren now, it's kind of a unique thing. I love my kids, my wife, and I love my little downriver area where I live. I live on Audubon Park. I love the city of Spokane and the county and the state. Pretty much grew up here. I'm not doing this out of hate or out of spite, and I am mad, but it's mad. It's madness motivated by love.
Yeah.
When Jesus walked into the temple and he got mad because people were in his dad's house and doing all this stuff, and he knocked over the tables, he was mad. But he was mad because he realized that there's truth in the world and there's justice in the world and there's someone else that we serve other than ourselves.
Yeah.
God, that sounded pretty good.
Yeah. Well,
Write that down, somebody.
that's what I see about you, Jim, is you're in it for the right reasons. And oftentimes the people that really aren't wanting to, be in office are the best people because they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it because it's a calling and to serve the people. And that's what I hear. And I know about you, we've had those conversations. What final comments to our voters? What last parting thoughts would you like to share with them?
Well, we know God has a sense of humor. And you can go to church and listen listen to the priest or the minister, and they follow God's plan, and it's really easy to sit there, yes, and then you put in these situations in your life, and gosh, I no, there's got to be a different plan.
There's got to be somebody else, Lord.
No, you're not. What are you thinking? You picked the wrong guy. Anyway, here I am, and I'm walking on the path. But early on, we're going to run out of time. I'm sorry, I'm
You're
talking.
fine.
When the election happened, the primary, and I went to an election party somewhere, and the returns were coming in, and I knew I had to get a percentage of the vote. And the first night there were 1,100 write-ins in my campaign, and I'm thinking, God, I kicked ass. So this is the ego thing. And so the next morning, I get a call from a lady who's a volunteer down at the elections office. I don't know how she got my number. I said, God, did I win? That's a lot of votes. And she goes, you have to understand there are write-in votes in every election. I'm going, oh, okay. She goes, there's Mickey Mouse, Superman, there's some expletive deleteds, anybody but a Republican, anybody, all this kind of stuff. So I said, you mean there's a strong potential that Mickey Mouse might beat me? And she goes, there's a strong possibility of that. And I'm going, oh, God. So every day I'd watch the returns and they're coming in, but the write-in votes are coming in. But long story short, it's not about me because there are people that voted in this who don't know me from Adam. This is about an idea, and the idea is way bigger than me. I'm just a pawn, and I'm not running for me because I I could pick 100 people who would be better at this. And maybe my job is to win this election and show people that they should run. And other people, I think they should run now. No, but anyway, I mean that there are talented people that should run, and we should change these elections out more often so that we don't have people beholden to the powers.
Yep.
And
For a
and
politician.
if some guy, I'm the kind of guy that somebody came in and tried to bribe me, I'd report him to whoever it is that you report a bribe to,
Okay.
unless it was big enough, and then I might. No, I'm just kidding.
Jim Wilson with a sense of humor, everybody, for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm
I
kidding
love
about
it.
that one in case anybody puts that on the news.
He was kidding.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, where can people go to engage with you in your campaign or donate to your campaign?
Oh, that's important. So jimwilson.wa.com or jimwilson4wa.com.
Yeah,
And
Jim Wilson or what?
jimwilson4wa.com.
Okay,
I think
awesome.
that's
I think that's right. That sounds right. And you can
okay.
go to SpokaneGOP.com. If that doesn't take you to the right spot, we've got Jim's link on there
Yeah.
and you can learn more about Jim. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time today to
Yeah.
meet with me and to
Get
share
out
your
and vote.
heart.
Get
Yep.
out and vote. And we could use the money because we're running against a machine.
Yeah, yes, your opponent has a lot of money.
Yeah.
He's been there for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And so, yes, donate to Jim's campaign. Help us get out the vote. Again, you can go to jimwilson4wa.com or you can go to spokanegop.com and find more information about Jim and help us get Jim across the finish line and get a
Power to the people.
Republican in the
Power to the
third
people.
for the yes, for I think it's like 50 years that the Democrats have held the third legislative district seats.
Time for
So
a change.
I think it's time for a change.
You bet.
Yes. All right, Jim. Thanks again. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
blessings, Jim. We appreciate you running. Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye-bye.